Mike, let's jump right into it. You bootstrapped your company for 2 years.
Oh, longer than 2, but
longer than 2, but 2 with actually, yeah, it was like 10 years before you accepted capital.
Like 10, yeah.
Talk a little bit about that process.
Well, yeah, starting a company, especially that time frame, it was a different time. It's sort of really kind of the very beginnings were like 2003, so it's been even more than 10 years. But yeah, so there was a lot to learn. There wasn't the kind of information you have out there today, and it just seemed like the right way to do it. I started out building a service-based business where, you know, if you don't have clients and serve them, then you don't make any money. So it was
and
a
you
little
didn't
bit
make a
foreign.
lot of
The
money.
concept of showing at somebody's door and saying, "Give me some money so I can build this thing," was not the first thought through my head. But times have changed.
Yep. And you didn't make a lot of money. I mean, you were 2 years and you had like 10 customers, like $100 a month coming in the door. How on earth what did you eat?
That is true. So it is a story of perseverance. So yeah, parents' basement, turned 30 there, 10 customers paying us $10 a month each. But you know, I think some really important things happened at that time. Since we had nothing, you had to figure out why you loved doing what you're doing and what motivated you. And we really loved serving customers, spoke with them all the time, and just that was the thing that got us through. It was really a passion for serving people, the fun of building product, and the challenge of trying to figure out how to do all this stuff. Like, I'd never worked in a product company. We were figuring everything out from first principles, and that was a lot of fun.
Yep. Yeah, challenging. You really didn't want to, and there were opportunities earlier in the company, you really didn't want to accept outside funding. Talk a little bit about why that was, what outside funding meant to you, and what was really critical about not doing that until some point when you're ready.
Yeah. So a pretty contrarian point of view these days. I feel like, you know, I'll meet an entrepreneur who has an idea and they're convinced that the next thing they need to do is go and raise capital. And that was definitely not where I was coming from. I had been to business school, but I guess at the heart of it was fear. I knew there was a bunch of stuff that I didn't know, and I knew that, and if you rewind the clock as well, like VCs, the behavior was not very good at all times, right? So it was a real information arbitrage that you were losing as an entrepreneur and they were repeatedly winning. So really poor evaluations, crappy terms, like a whole bunch of just non-entrepreneur, like today there's a term called founder friendly. Well, that didn't exist when I started, right? It was the opposite of that. We're going to screw this person. We might even invest so we can like push them out and put in some operator who doesn't love the problem. Like very, very different time. And so for those reasons, instinctually, I kind of got that I should be afraid. But if you really want to get to the heart of it, the real reason was this, is we were so customer obsessed at FreshBooks that knowing that I didn't know stuff, I was afraid that I would kind of lose my way and lose, you know, not so much control, but as like authority, I guess.
Yes.
And I was afraid one day I'd show up at a board meeting and be told that, you know, we are outsourcing customer service, you know, to a lower cost provider, which is, you know, frankly what Dell and everybody was doing at the time, only, you know, to bring it all back because, you know, it wasn't working for customers. So it was primarily fear and the knowledge that I did not know things. Yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, I've raised a small round, an A round, I've raised a seed round, and so I know a little bit of some of those things. You know a lot more because you've raised a significant round since then, but it is challenging. There is an information imbalance. There's a whole new vocabulary to learn, and of course it has implications for how you run your company, what you do, all those sorts of things. Yeah. Let's turn to growth a little bit, and I know maybe you can't say everything, but let's start in the early days. What were some of the core drivers? I know you started out slow, you had the 10 customers for 2 years, but a rocket got attached to that some way, somehow at some point. What were the core drivers of that?
So in those early days, like here's something we had going for us. So the consulting business I was running before was helping small businesses acquire customers. So we knew about, like through the internet. So we knew about internet marketing. And so that's how we started out. The reason we only had 10 customers was because we didn't really understand pricing and packaging. we were basically giving away our product. We had thousands of people signing up every month, but relatively few choosing to pay at that time. And so we kind of knew we were onto something.
Yeah.
People were, again, signing up every day. Used to get an email every time somebody signed up for a trial, and throughout the day, you're getting this little hit of excitement because that email comes across the wire. But we didn't have the pricing right. We probably didn't have the full product that people needed yet. And and forgive me, take me back on track because the long flights cut my short-term memory out.
No worries.
So where did growth come from?
Core drivers of growth.
So we started out with internet marketing, like SEO and those kinds of things, but pretty quickly it turned to word of mouth.
Yep.
One of the things I realized, instinctually or otherwise, but you can have the best product in the world, and if nobody knows about it, you lose.
Yes.
And so became obsessed with getting the word out, and we spent a lot of time just thinking strategically about how to do that. Interestingly, doing crazy stunts and things like that. We go to conferences and not just show up, but just do silly things to stand out. And then things like blogging and stuff were taking off then. So it got into that, and I wrote something like 400 blog posts over a couple of years on the company blog, and I haven't written one in like 5 or 6 years or what have you. It's not something I do so much anymore. But those were the kinds of things then. But as between the stunts and using the internet marketing and everything else, it started to become just word of mouth, and people were passing on, hey, this is great service. It's really easy to use.
Cool.
And that's still the biggest driver today.
10 points for saying blog posts and not I wrote 10 blogs a day or 400 blogs. That's awesome. Now you had this opportunity. You were growing. You were scaling the company. Things were pretty good. You got a call from Wells Fargo. Big bank, obviously some bells would have gone off in the office when somebody says, hey, we got a call from Wells Fargo. They may want to do a deal with us. That sounds exciting. It sounds, oh, wow, but you eventually turned that down.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the process of thinking through huge opportunity, maybe wrong, not doing it.
I remember this day pretty well. I just want to take you all there for a second. So. Just paint a bit of a picture. So we're working in my parents' basement. Okay,
not the garage.
There are four
basement.
of us. Well, in Canada, it gets cold in the winter. So
Yes.
the garage is not a four-season thing. So it's the basement. So in Canada, we start our businesses in the basement. So anyhow, so there we are. And I'm dressed like I am today, and so is my co-founder. I think he didn't have his shoes on, had socks on at the time, and this phone call comes in. And it's Wells Fargo on the other end of the line. And so I sat up pretty straight once I realized what they were doing. And they were hunting for somebody to be an online invoicing product for them. And what we ended up doing was, kind of fielding the call. And yes, of course, I would be happy to, pass you on to the CEO and change my voice ever so slightly in a couple of minutes to be the CEO. But I built a good relationship with them, flew down, and I had done client pitches before, but I'd never done one in like the 55th tower in downtown San Francisco. But there we go. We flew down a couple times, and we actually won the deal. We competed with a bunch of other folks. The thing about winning a deal like that when you're at that stage of a company is it all of a sudden opportunistically,
yes.
Like trying to stay focused is so hard. We have all kinds of people who are trying to tug us in all kinds of ways. But then a deal like this comes along and you're sitting there saying, this could be the thing that makes us, right? And, that thought was like, maybe it is, right? It's the old like, well, if we just get 3% of our, 5 million small business customers to attach, you're going to be laughing. But what's actually going on is if you do that deal, you're putting yourself on a very different path. It's one where you're really turning into kind of like almost like an enterprise software company serving large clients. And having said that, I had no idea what to do. I didn't know if it was the right call. And so, if you're running an early stage company, you might get one of those calls. And so I had an advisor who had founded a multi-billion-dollar public company, and I went to him and I was like, what do you do? And he was like, I don't know, Mike. I trust you're going to come up with the right decision, which was great coaching. And
that's exactly what you wanted, right?
It's the right answer, but I was like, oh, darn it, it's back on my shoulder. So, anyways, they sent over the deal, and I saw it, and it looked great, and there was all kinds of hope and aspirations, and I sent it back to them. I said, if you pay us 10 times as much, we'll do it. And they said no. And I said, I think that's what I wanted anyways. You know, so it's kind of a bit of a cop-out, just to put it back to them. But it would have completely changed the trajectory of the company. Like, we would have stopped building out the product and doing the things we needed to do to have the success that we had. So I'm super glad we didn't do the deal.
Interesting. So let's fast forward a few years. You eventually ended up accepting some VC. Can you talk through a little bit of the process of when did you know it was the right time, and why did you take that?
Yeah, so I don't know everyone in this room, but I had managed to, through the, let's call it around like 2010 to sort of 2014, cement myself as like the poster boy for the anti-VC movement. I just had a real chip on my shoulder over the years because of all these things I was afraid of, some of the bad things I'd seen happen to entrepreneurs and these kinds of things. But I'd always taken the calls and spoken with people and been like, okay, why are you different? You know, because, you know, really venture capitalists are selling money, right? Like, they're doing a deal to put money to work, right? So it's interesting dynamic if you think about it that way. And so I was looking for the right fits, and I started to kind of pattern recognize these folks I like, these folks I never want to work with, and start to sift through it. But the other thing that was going on is I was learning the stuff I didn't know. And when you think about what a venture capitalist wants to do, is they want to invest money and get a return. And in those early days, like, first of all, I didn't understand that really, nor did I know how to do it. But systematically, as we built the business up, I'd gone ahead and, well, we de-risked the product. You know, hey, we had a market-leading product. We had a market, right? Because that's another thing. You build a great product, but there's no market for it. We had, you know, sort of actually built the team. I struggled for a long time, and this is hard if you haven't done it before, but like hiring really great executives. Yes. Like, I thought I had built a team, and it turns out that I just didn't know what the right people look like until I found one. And that was the final piece. So you de-risk the product, the market, the team. I got addicted to hiring those kinds of people. And then I was just like, well, now the only thing holding us back is actually capital. Right. So let's do that. And so we raised $30 million in 2014. We raised another sort of 50 in, I guess last year was when the sort of news went out. But yeah, so it's, you know, yeah. I like to reserve the right to change my mind. Yeah.
So far, so good.
Yeah.
Excellent. So you raised VC, a significant amount of VC, and you almost immediately re-platformed the company. In other words, ripped out the software. You didn't do this, but re-platforming essentially usually is ripping out the software and putting a whole new chunk of software in. You knew you kind of needed to do that. You had an interesting thing going on there, but it was a kind of a bet the company sort of thing. Walk us through kind of that process of understanding the need and then finding the right way to do it, which wasn't totally a bet the company type of scenario. Yeah,
you're never going to be able to find the answer to a big question in a spreadsheet, right? Like, it doesn't work that way. And so I was basically, you know, we started the business in the early days. We started it like before Rails existed. Like, a lot of our technology, we were building our own frameworks and stuff like this. So you know, just had this thing in the back of my mind for a while, like, hey, like, we really just wish we could move faster. And you know, the world had changed. Things like Rails and other technologies like it had come along. You have mobile phones, right? And big thing with that is really consumers' expectations change, because now you push a button and a car shows up and delivers food. And, you know, prior to that, people weren't thinking or expecting those kinds of things. You know, really, technology started, you know, sort of holding us back. And so, you know, I was just looking into the future and asking myself the question, you know, for big decisions I like to ask, I'd like just fast forward 5, 10, 30 years into the future, what do you think the right call is from that point of view? Because today it's hard. And you know, I was asking myself, are we going to have the market-leading product in 5 years? You know, we have it today. Do I think we will? And the answer I came up with was no. I thought that, like, a lot of our problems from a technology and architecture standpoint were glomming together of, since we got enough software people here, I think I can get a little nerdy about it. But, you know, we just had, like, business logic and front-end code in the same thing. And that was, you know, what it meant was I guess there's some problems you can't, like, refactor or iterate your way to greatness on. And we needed new, more modern user experience, and that basically meant rewrite.
Yep.
And so that's what we decided to do. We kind of didn't jump into it. We took some funny approaches. By the way, very dangerous thing to do, like strategically unwise, going to cost more than you think. You probably won't finish. Your competition's moving while you're not doing it. And so, for those reasons and more, it's probably one of the worst business decisions you can make in
Some businesses
software.
don't recover from that.
Some do not require. I'm pleased to report that we took 1 year off as the editor's choice in our category for our software, and actually just reclaimed it a couple weeks ago. So that was nice. But long story short, we decided to do it despite the risks, and then I had a couple other little things that were bothering me about the rewrite. I don't know if any of y'all have looked at this, but we were concerned about, frankly, creating the conditions where the team could take big risks. Yes. I think a lot of the reason innovative projects inside big companies fail or come up lukewarm and iterative is because you have a brand, and you kind of, that brand constrains you, right? You can't really take a huge risk if your brand, Nike can't really release a totally crappy product, right? Because they're Nike, and that'll eat away at people's confidence in them. So there's that, and then I also just hate the notion of people watching us, right? I knew we wouldn't be able to flip a switch and have it live. I didn't want to be tracked. I wanted to have enough ahead time. And so we thought about launching in like a small market, and what we actually ended up deciding to do, and I'm not aware of this ever happening in the history of software or any other business in the world that I'm aware of, was we actually decided to, I think the elegant way to say it now is to split test companies. And what we did was we created basically a disposable brand with its own website and URL that was completely unrelated to us, its own articles of incorporation with like no tie to our business. And that is where we built our new platform. And then we sent traffic at it and understood the funnel, and is it business performer? Because you can build a whole new platform and it can perform more poorly than yours when you flip the switch. You don't know because you haven't had it really in production. So we were basically able to de-risk a whole bunch of things. We could create the conditions where a team could take massive risks. We knew the business would be performant when we got there. And so we created this thing called Bill Spring, and that was the way we approached replatforming.
And we literally have 30 seconds left, but I mean, the day you knew that it was time to flip that switch was the day that somebody called up and said, hey, I'm canceling because there's this new thing called Bill Spring, and it's freaking awesome, and I'm moving there.
That was indeed the best customer churn experience that I'm,
exactly.
My history to date. So,
yeah, excellent. Yeah. Do you still maintain the old code base for
we do. If we're going to go over by 10 seconds here, I'll just say, we really thought about migration. I was like, hey, it's a place where you can really mess people up. I don't know if you've ever gotten a bad update on your phone, or Windows made you move to Vista from XP or something like that. Sorry, Microsoft, if you're here. But so we didn't want to force that on people, and we gave people the ability to choose when they migrated, and even the ability to roll back if they didn't like the new thing just yet, which again is another thing I'm not sure anyone has done in the history of software, but as a really customer-focused company, we thought was the right thing to do.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That was wonderful.
Cool. Thanks, Tom.
I need some traction. You need some traction. Let's get some traction.